The sacred is revealed in the ordinary. There is a beauty in this. But how do we discover the mystery of the sacred in our seemingly mundane existence? Welcome to Revealed, a podcast sponsored by Resurrection Catholic Parish in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Let's join our hosts, Katie McAllister and Tony Pickler, as they explore the lives of people, organizations, and resources that will help us delve into the sacredness of the ordinary.
Welcome to another episode of our Revealed podcast. We are so excited that you're with us today because we are going to be breaking open a prayer practice. Now, those of you that are in the know that we always rotate. We go from highlighting a person on our podcast to an organization, to in person, and then to a prayer practice. And so this is the time for the rotation to be on a prayer practice. And you're probably wondering what prayer practice we're going to offer to you today. And that is going to be something called the Labyrinth.
You mean the Labyrinth, Katie?
The Labyrinth.
Labyrinth. Kind of like Labrador.
Labyrinth.
Labyrinth.
Oh, okay.
You're going into the lab.
The lab.
Of spirituality.
There. Oh, wow. That's awesome, Tony. Well, thank you. So, you seem to know a lot about what this labyrinth is. What is it? Tell our listeners what it is.
Well, I'm definitely no resident expert on the Labyrinth. However, I do know a little bit of something about it. So, the Labyrinth, as far as I can tell, dates back all the way to like 430 BC, 430 years before Jesus' time. And so you got to think that, and by the way, it was developed by the Greeks. And so you got to think that sometime 450 years later, maybe Jesus was exposed to the labyrinth. Who knows? We don't know. But certainly the Greeks had influence all over that part of the world, from Rome down through Palestine to Egypt. And so the practice of the labyrinth and the popularity of it certainly spread really throughout the known world of the time.
So we could say that Jesus plausibly could have done this prayer practice.
He may have. We don't know that for a fact, and obviously that is not included in Scripture. But it could be plausible that is the case. So how does it become a Christian practice? Well, some people will say, well, that's just one of those pagan practices developed by the Greeks. A lot of our practices in Christianity have been taken from, borrowed from, adapted from practices from the Greeks, the Romans, all kinds of different people. Just a couple of examples. Why is Christmas on Christmas?
Because that's when Jesus was born.
Yes, and maybe no. Christmas is Christmas because it was co-opted from the Romans who worshiped the sun god on December 25th. And we said the sun god, S-O-N God, will be celebrated on the 25th of December. Christmas from the Romans. Why do priests and ministers and such wear the garb that they wear?
The vestments?
Yes.
Because they're cold up at the altar?
Maybe. Probably not during July and August. But they wear those because at the time of Jesus and the centuries following, that was the clothing of the time. And so Roman officials and Roman people wore those kinds of vestments, especially when they were leading organizational meetings and things like that. They had a role to play. And so they wore these vestments taken from the Romans. So a lot of things we do are taken from other cultures, including the labyrinth. So it has been a Christian practice now, really probably since the beginning of Christianity. It really became popular in the Middle Ages. And so one of the most famous labyrinths in the entire world is on the floor of Chartres Cathedral in France, southern France. And so when you go to St. Norbert Abbey, their labyrinth is based on that. Many labyrinths around the world are based on Chartres. So all throughout Christianity, the labyrinth has become a Christian prayer practice.
Very cool. So you kind of mentioned about St. Norbert Abbey and these different labyrinths. Now, I've seen them, and to most people, they might look like a maze, but they're really not a maze, right, Tony?
It's amazingly so.
It's amazingly so, yeah.
It's not a maze.
It's not, because you're not being tricked through this. You're not finding dead ends. You're not finding, wrong ways.
It's not a puzzle.
It's not a puzzle. So it's one way in, one way out. So it is not a maze. So why don't we kind of go through what are the steps of walking a labyrinth? Labyrinth.
We're going to the prayer lab of
prayer
Labyrinth.
lab, yes.
So to walk the labyrinth, first of all, there's lots of different ways, and I think you'll be covering that later, Katie. But what you want to do is think about this as it's a walk, a spiritual walk that's walked at a slower pace. It's not only a physical activity of actually walking, but it's an interior activity as well. So you're going to actually be following the path of the labyrinth, and which is kind of designed usually in a circular fashion, and you're going to be winding your way to the center of the labyrinth. And when you are there, and what you're trying to think about when you're walking towards the center is going into the center of yourself. Like what is within you that needs healing? What is within you that needs to be celebrated? What is within you that you want to lift up in prayer, right? You get to the center and you pause and maybe say some prayers. Take some time to just be quiet, reflect, contemplate. Then it's time to it's just like going to the mountaintop experience. It's now time to go back out. And so you retrace your steps out, but now your thoughts are not so much interior-wise. They are outward thinking, outward looking, outward approach. So who are the people you need to be thinking about in your lives? What are the situations that you need to be lifting up in prayer? So what are the situations in our world that need prayer? And so now we're focused out as we journey to the outside of the labyrinth.
So it's a full package prayer experience where you're focusing on yourself, on God, and others.
Absolutely.
So, beautiful. Well, thanks, Tony, for explaining a little bit of the process of how to walk the labyrinth. But now you're probably thinking, well, where do I do this? How do I have access to this labyrinth? Well, you could, when you're mowing your grass, you could cut one into your grass if that's you're inclined to, which would be really cool. But
great idea.
It would be a little bit of calculating. So why don't we give you some resources of locations of some labyrinths that you can walk with? So first of all, here at Resurrection, we have a portable one. It's one we lay out on the floor. It's on canvas, and we put that out on seasonal basis. So you can always just kind of check out, or if you wanted to let us know if you're interested in using it, maybe we could make some arrangements for you. The second one is the St. Norbert Abbey. It's open for everybody. You just pull into the Abbey off of Webster Avenue, and you park by the tennis courts, and it's right there by the tennis courts. So you can walk that one as well. Now, I believe that's only when there's grass out, right, Tony?
Right. So during winter, not the best time to walk that labyrinth, but and also not the greatest when it's early spring. I will say that. But give it, May through October, November. It's a great place.
Another one is the St. Norbert College Schneider Stadium. They have a really cool one that it's not grass, it's actually brick. So it's accessible all year round if they plow it off. But it's a brick labyrinth that you can walk on. But what if you have some mobility issues? What if you have not enough time to find these locations? We also have an option of doing a finger labyrinth, which all you have to do is go online, print it off, and you use your finger and you follow that same process, but instead of walking, your finger is tracing the labyrinth and you're doing the inner thinking, praying to God, and then the outer thinking as your finger moves.
And for that one, you probably just want to Google finger labyrinth, and labyrinth is spelled Labyrynth. So pretty simple to do.
Perfect. Thanks, Tony. And then another one that you can do is actually kind of cool that I just learned from you, Tony, is to walk the pews in your church. So a lot of churches are open during the day, that's silence and that's solitude. You can come in and you can walk the pews. So walking through, kind of weaving yourself back and forth through the pews, starting in the back of the church to the front of church, and then weaving your way back through the pews out of church. And so those are some great resources that you can do. Now, I also did a little Google, and I found that there's a website called Labyrinth labyrinthlocator.com, and you put in your area, and they'll show you and they'll tell you locations of other labyrinths. So if you're listening and you're in Florida or California, wherever you're listening, and you want access to a labyrinth, try that out. So it's labyrinthlocator.com, and it'll give you a listing of the labyrinths in your location.
Which sounds like a really great tool, to take with you on vacation, or if you're heading on a retreat somewhere, to find out if there's a labyrinth in that area. I think it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. So there's certain advantages and disadvantages of walking the labyrinth, or with any prayer practice, to be honest with you. Labyrinth is such a great prayer practice and a contemplative prayer practice, especially for those who can't, like me. I find it hard to just sit in a chair for 20 minutes and go deep into myself, because normally what I do is fall asleep. So the labyrinth allows for that movement, and prayerful movement, but movement so that you're not doing that. So I would say it's a huge advantage. Gets out in nature for most of the examples that we gave you. It's just a way to kind of holistically pull together a lot of what spirituality is all about. One of the disadvantages, and you kind of alluded to it already, is, it is for those who can actually walk the labyrinth. So if you're limited in your mobility, some of the labyrinths, like I said, like over at St. Norbert, sometimes the path is not the most smooth and whatever. So, it takes the ability to walk and walk fairly well. So that can sometimes be a disadvantage for some, is that it's not the most accessible to all. Yet, if you use a finger labyrinth or a tool like that, it kind of gets you beyond that disadvantage. But it's a movement labyrinth, but yet it's a contemplative practice. And so, like any contemplative practice, it's not for everybody. And so you got to kind of try it out, and maybe try out a couple different ones to see if it's something that suits you. I have to say, my experience of both St. Norbert Abbey and Schneider Stadium, both are on fairly busy streets, and so the quiet isn't necessarily there in terms of contemplation. So,
and they probably don't want you doing this at midnight, where where it is quiet. So
right.
Pick your best time.
Using that locator might not be a bad thing, or to use some other means of doing this as well. But they're both great places. It's just that both of them are located on pretty busy streets.
Well, and like I said before, you can always just cut one into your grass when you're mowing the lawn.
And you could do that as well. Check it out online. I'm sure there's a website that says how to create a labyrinth in your backyard.
YouTube it. That's always a YouTube video.
Anything on YouTube.
Yes. Well, we invite you to try this walking the labyrinth at least one time. So find a day, especially a beautiful spring, summer day, where you can be outside and just enjoy this prayer practice. So that's our Revealed podcast for today. We invite you to come back to our next one, when we are going to have superstar, Jeopardy winning St. Norbert College philosophy professor Ben Chan as our guest. You may have heard of him, especially, around Green Bay, where he has just lit up Jeopardy. So we are excited to welcome him into our studio and interview him for Revealed. And he's going to show us how he saw God revealed in his experience through Jeopardy and beyond.
And as of this taping, we don't know how much money that guy's won or how many times he's won. We will find out certainly by the time that we tape him record him for our next episode. And maybe he'll be buying us lunch. We don't know.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a revealed day.
Until next time, keep your eyes and your ears open for those moments where you experience the sacred in the ordinary.
This has been Revealed, a podcast sponsored by Resurrection Catholic Parish in Green Bay, Wisconsin.